you tired of the daily hustle and bustle, the endless traffic just to get your little one to a good school? GMS Snap Bingo offers a unique blend of academic excellence with a holistic child development in both nursery and primary. We provide a national curriculum with an international touch. Enroll your child today by visiting our campus along Trinity College, Dabigo Road. GMS Snap Bingo, where every child's potential is a reality. Because we care.
Welcome to Second Take with Isma Dakawachigongo. A brand new week, a brand new record was set over the weekend. Remember to click, share and subscribe if you haven't yet done so. My name is Mebo Kevirunji and I can't wait to get started. I won't even ask you how your weekend was because I know on Sunday you were in the office watching history in the making. How are you, Isma?
The privilege that I have is that kind of privilege to watch sport and fall in love with it. Actually, I'd promised myself that I would be in office because had I watched the race anywhere outside of the office, I would have taken long to get to work. And I don't mind working on Sundays, unlike many people. There is no traffic, there is no nothing. And even in office, the internet is faster because there are less of us who are logged in on a Sunday. So I don't mind being on my desk on Sunday. But anyway, what a privilege that London brought.
You'll tell your great-grandkids.
one of the eternal discussions around athletics has always been whether human beings can run under 2 hours. And I remember when Eliud Kipchoge first came out with that theme, no human is limited. We all felt it was just a marketing gimmick between him, his sponsors Ineos and Nike, and wasn't something that was doable. No athlete, however good they were, was going to be able one day to run under 2 hours. And actually, even if the argument has been around for some time, it never felt like someone was getting to the mark where they would. And when Eliud Kipchoge tried it 6-7 years ago, of course, there was a debate around how the conditions had been doctored for him to be and that's why he was able to run under the 2 hours. And also the pace setters, not only the conditions, the weather had to be perfect, the pace setters, and the pace setters also acted as windbreakers to ensure that the wind would not blow straight into his mouth and nose, that then would make it very difficult for him to go under 2 hours. Eventually he did, but everyone knew the conditions had been doctored. And there was even a debate about the shoes, the Nike Fly super shoes that were supposed to help him. They had a carbon plate that was different from normal running shoes. And in the end, Eliud Kipchoge's record was not supposed to count. Then along came a young boy called Kelvin Kiptum. In 2023, he went to London and ran what was by then the fastest marathon, bona fide marathon, like the athletes call it. And everyone started to sense maybe someone could do it. Then later on, he went to Chicago in 2023 and ran the marathon, the 42 kilometers, in a time of 2 hours and 35 seconds, 2:00:35. Then there was a genuine belief again that someone could actually do it. Then Kelvin Kiptum passes on. And then maybe the debate died because everyone felt Kelvin Kiptum had the talent, because by the time he ran that 2:00:35 in Chicago, he was still very young and everyone knew he could actually get better. Then after Kiptum, the debate around whether someone could run under 2 hours, for me, died a bit. But over the past week or so, or the past fortnight, there's been a conversation that actually the world record could be broken at the London Marathon or later on this year. And the names that had been thrown in that hat were largely Sebastian Sawe and Jacob Kiplimo. Those were the two athletes that the world has been looking at. So when the London Marathon comes around, and throughout the race, largely, Sebastian Sawe was on pace to break the world record. I kept on thinking, maybe not. because he had been on world record pace last year, but ran a much slower second phase of the race. The final 21 kilometers was slower than the first 21 for the simple reason that the weather changed. That when he started the race, the weather was around 14 to 16 degrees centigrade, and that was very good running weather. But then by the time he got the second part of the race, he had blown up and were above the 24. So he slowed down in the second part of the race last year. So this year, when the conditions remained the same, by the time they went past the 1 hour mark, the commentators were actually starting to say, these guys are on world record pace and anything is possible. So eventually, by the time he broke it and eventually did 1 hour 59:30 seconds, it was mind-blowing the manner in which Sebastian Sawe was able to do it. And we're talking about someone who in every sense of the word is a late developer. Not that he was actually, because athletics carriers in the long distance go in two ways. You're excellent on the track, then when you age, you switch to the road, which is what the carriers we know with Gabriel Selassie, with Kenenisa Bekele, with now Joshua Cheptegei and all the others. Now, Sebastian Sawe was never good on the track. He actually has no track medals to speak of or track legacy for us to debate on or to chew on. So he starts doing the marathon, I think, if you read his CV, it's somewhere around the age of 27 or 28, which in athletics is late development.
Yeah, it's old.
Then it starts to choke up the victories. Then thereafter, wow, London is unforgettable. He goes and breaks not only the world record, but also becomes the first man to run under 2 hours. But such was the excellence of this race in terms of running, that even the person who came second, the Ethiopian, Yomov Kejelcha, also ran under 2 hours. And Jacob Kiplimo, who came third, was also inside the previous world record because his time was 2 hours 00:28 seconds. And the previous world record was 2 hours 00:35 seconds. So what an amazing race. What a privilege to be to be there to watch it. I was actually feeling sorry for one of my colleagues with whom I watch a race, Clive Chaze. Last year, he traveled to London for the London Marathon. And the reason why he went to watch, it was Jacob Kiplimo's debut. And he had a feeling, like many of us, that actually
it was his time.
Jacob Kiplimo would win the London Marathon. Eventually was beaten by now someone we can call a once-in-a-generation athlete, Sebastian Sawe. So this year, Clive Chaze chooses that he's not traveling to London.
He's going for Commonwealth.
Yeah, because he's saving his money for the World Cup and the Commonwealth Games. Then, where he wasn't, the bigger stories then break. Because that race by Sebastian Sawe is one that, if you watch athletics,
we'll go down
maybe
we'll
go down in history. There are so many things you can forget about athletics. Maybe one of them is, one of the things you cannot forget is having watched Usain Bolt. I think this is second to that.
Wow.
Yeah, Sebastian Sawe's finish and the manner in which he choked up that victory. Wow,
let's talk
amazing.
about the shoes, because I've even seen something about a post. What role did the sponsors have in this world record?
One of the competitions, sport has many facets now, with branding, with all. One of the competitions now we have with sport is the two big giants, Nike and Adidas. And Adidas have been on the periphery in terms of success, especially with athletics, because the Nike athletes, the Joshua Cheptegei, the Jacob Kiplimo, the Eliud Kipchoge, the Usain Bolt, Vivian Cheriot, Shelley-Ann Fraser-Price, Alison Felix, all those great athletes are all Nike sponsored. So finally, Adidas have an athlete with whom they can go and make adverts of their super shoe, which Nike has already had. And they can make a case that they are the best kit manufacturers. And of course, this war will be heightened with the World Cup. Remember, we also have the World Cup coming up that has Germany and Argentina with the Adidas, competing with Brazil with the Nike. And Brazil sell the largest number of jerseys. In a year, the average jerseys that are sold by Nike for Brazil is 5 million. So that is another facet. That's how wide sport has become. That is not only the abilities of athletes that are under debate, it's also how good the kit they are wearing
Yes.
has been a factor in them winning. Because this was an Adidas double. Because even the girl who won and also broke the world record, the Ethiopian, Asefa, also won the London Marathon last year, is also an Adidas athlete. So that has been going on for some time. And finally, Adidas, I think, on the track, in athletics, on the track, on the road, have not had a lot of success until they found Sawi. Of course, in other places they have.
So
with
is
the
it
football,
about
with the,
you signing players? Because I know someone like Gout in Australia. I think there was a bit of a fight. I don't know if it was Adidas and Nike. They wanted to sign him quick or something. There was something about him being signed, but he was still young. And then I don't know.
I've not seen the story in particular to Gout, but such is the war or the branding or the financial between these kit manufacturers that it starts for some of these athletes when they are teenagers. Yeah, you find athletes like LeBron James, like Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, I think, signed his first Nike contract, which he has worn his entire life, right from Nike to becoming TW on his cap, before he even won his first major. These guys are signing some of these athletes when they are still in high school. LeBron, the Kobe's, of course, signed later. Then there are those who sign lifetime contracts. The Michael Jordans, that even when they are no longer competing, they are still being paid by their kit manufacturers. You may find an athlete like Allen Iverson, who signed his first Nike contract, I think, back in 1998 or 99, and I think it runs out in the next 2 or 3 years. But he's since long retired. So it's a facet of the game that is generating a lot of money and now a lot of attention because of Sebastian Sawe being able to break the world record while running in an Adidas. And it's not common because most of the athletes and most of us would know that Nike has been perhaps the market leader globally.
And you can't change. You couldn't have changed midway and say, you know what, I'm not winning with Adidas, let me change to Nike.
Some of them do change. Some of them do change. I think in the early years, for example, Steph Curry, I think, was wearing Under Armour, and his since changed. There's a few of them that change because eventually it's about the money. You sign a contract with Nike and it's 10 years and then it's done and then you switch. Yeah, it's happened. We've seen even with some of the most watched and most cheered teams, Manchester United and Arsenal. I think in our lifetime we've seen them switch from Nike to Adidas to Puma to all these kind of kit manufacturers. But sometimes there are contracts that if you're the managing director or the CEO of an organization and you lose such a contract, the board should sit and sack you the next day. Let's say you're the kit manufacturer of Real Madrid. Yeah, the world's most profitable, richest, biggest brand. And you're the kit manufacturer there and you lose that kind of contract to a rival, then the board really needs to look into your contract immediately after.
Let's talk about the Ugandan performance there. What were your thoughts?
I thought Jacob Kiplimo did very well, but he was blown away. That's how good Sebastian Sayo was, that I would have sat on this show and wanted to discuss how good Kiplimo was, but Kiplimo now is a footnote. Because there's something there's something so beautiful about sport that even when you're beaten by someone who is much better and it's not the one you're rooting for, I think you've got to be magnanimous enough to acknowledge how good the competition was. That's why sometimes when watching football, I have a soft spot for Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp. That sometimes when their team concedes what is a very beautiful goal, they stand up and actually do applaud it, because that's the beauty. Because you must love sport beyond your own biases, of your own ability to win. So what I thought Kiplimo did very well, and like I stated earlier, his time would have broken the world record that was set by Kelvin Kiptum, but that was only good enough for third place. And while I was watching television, I waited in front of the cameras at the finish, and I didn't see Joshua Cheptegei. Actually, for long, I thought that he had not finished the race until I went to the BBC and then read that he had actually finished 12th.
What happened?
2:06. I've not seen an interview of exactly what happened to him because, but I was not expecting him to be among the winners. I've stated repeatedly that while his career on the track is legendary, he has to do a lot of work to transit and do the same kind of things he did on the track and become as successful on the road. And sometimes for these world marathon majors, if Kipsiro gets into the top 5, I think he's done very well, because the kind of people who...
Kipsiro or Cheptegei?
Rather, sorry, Cheptegei. I don't know, because before I came here, I was watching Kipsir on television. There's been a Uganda Olympic Committee event that I was watching, so it got into my mind. But clearly, he has not yet figured out how to win big races on the road. And maybe he could win the second and third tier races now in the marathon. But New York, Berlin, Boston, Chicago, Sydney, Tokyo, and London, the 7 world marathon majors, he's clearly not at the same level yet. Now he still has to insist on doing well in Amsterdam, Valencia, Eshede, Istanbul, the smaller Cape Town, the smaller marathons, and maybe then he can elevate his level over time. So I'm not one of those who's crying over where I finished. The quality of the field was not the standard that was going to match.
Okay. You talked about a footnote there. You know, he's now been relegated to a footnote. But to the Uganda Premier League, a footnote, you would say, Calvary, did some amazing stuff. They are still putting up a fight.
Yeah, they are inevitably going to get relegated. And not that I want to be popular.
Because they drew with
Kitara the other week and now beat KCCA. And I'm not going to be popular in Midigo or in Yombe for saying this, but I think they'll get relegated inevitably because they had a very terrible start. And unfortunately for them, when there was that new format early in the season, they had too many games on the road than they had at home.
Yeah.
So it was always it made them
work against them.
They're working overtime, I think, to stay in the league. And sometimes when I look at these teams, they're also paying the price for distance.
Yeah, it's not fair. It's almost 500 kilometers from Kampala, isn't it?
To get to Yombe.
500.
I've had friends who have lost parents, who have lost family, and I've wanted to go and attend burials in Zombo and Yombe, and one of them at Jumani, and then one in Palabek, my friend John Torach, who does the morning show on Radio 1. And they've clearly told me, yes, we know your relationship with us, but please don't come. You're going to lose a lot of your time just traveling to attend a burial. So I think they paid the price for that. But if they go down, if a man goes down, they must go down fighting. And I like the fact that they are going down fighting. At least now they are a credible football team, not one that comes into the league and loses every game. So that 1-0 result against KCCA may cause a bit of ripples at the bottom, but also causes ripples at the top. Because KCC had the opportunity to stay within 4 points of Vipers, and now it's 7 points because they lost that, and then Vipers went ahead and won their game by 3-0 against Entebbe, Uganda Printing and Publishing Corporation. Entebbe, for whom their coach Abdallah Mubiru lost his father over the weekend. Inna lillahi wa inna ilahi rajiun. So Vipers then gain an advantage, but also because KCC were losing, the results that Villa and Kitara got ensure that now there's 3 teams on 51 points, because Vipers are 58, and now KCC, Villa and Kitara all are 51, ahead of that huge clash at the MTN Omondi Stadium in Lugogo. You sense that KCC have to win. If we still think there's going to be a title race, KCC have to win the game. Because if Vipers were to win, then they are as many as 10 points clear of KCCA. So that would be a title race gone. But all signs point to Vipers getting a positive result at Lugogo. Not only because they've not lost in the league on the pitch, they've lost a game in the boardroom, but also because, for me, they are getting options of goals from different areas. For example, for this particular game, their super sub, Gosto Mulonga, scored a goal, and then you have Sentamo also scoring. Sentamo has not had a lot of minutes on the pitch. Then, of course, you've had the options Karim Watambala and then Usama Rafat, and all the other guys who have been contributing over the long season. So they have options. And Jackie Ivan Mina has got to harness all those options for them to be able to get them results. And then KCCA do not have the same kind of luxury. They've not had very many good performances from several players for them to start to think that they are going to chop and change and then get the kind of result. Or when the game is not going well, they are going to get someone off a bench and get a result. And I've seen one of the stories that has been very interesting this morning. I've been laughing about. One of KCCA's players, one of their captains, Herbert Achai, decided to have his wedding on the day they were losing in Yombe. And some people have been very, very critical about him choosing to have his wedding on that day. That he would rather have had his wedding on in the off season,
yeah,
like many players do.
yeah.
But he chose to have it on the day when they were having a game in Yombe. So I don't know where people fall, but in these things of family, sometimes it's very difficult to take an extreme line. Yeah. But also the smartest thing would have been that he has his wedding in the off season, like many players do. But also, had KCCA won, maybe none of us would even have known whether Chai was getting married, one. Or two, many of us would have been on social media saying, congratulations, Herbert Achai and your wife. Yeah, so it's a tough balancing act. Maybe what the wife chose at the wedding has to happen, because you people can be very difficult. Because the moment I say I have to do this first, then get to you, then maybe I will be saying, you chose that over me. Yeah, it's a very tough balancing act sometimes for men. I feel sorry for all the men out there.
I also feel sorry for them.
That's why I always tell people that spend 23 hours a day fearing women and 1 hour fearing men who don't fear women.
Isma, but there was another accident that happened, but this time it seemed it was managed better. I think I saw a picture of a player who was at hospital.
Yeah.
People were commenting and saying, oh, they shouldn't have put his face there and all that. But
I must have missed that.
He had a concussion, I think.
Yeah.
I'll ask our producer Jeremiah to fact check that.
Yeah, that player, yeah.
Maybe I'm getting it wrong.
But I also see a story of still with the league. There's fans from KCCA who are involved in an accident while traveling from Yomba. I saw the car from my interpretation, the car looked like a drone at the front. Yeah. But luckily they are all alive, and some sustained in injuries, and they had been checked into a medical facility on their way. So we wish them a very quick recovery, but very unfortunate. A reminder about driving safe. And sometimes when you say that, it's not even just about the football fans, it's all of us. But sometimes over the years, football has always brought out the beast in the drivers that take these cars. Many of us who, for example, see a bit of the Masaza Cup, you see how, okay, there is the emotion and the attachment that people have to their heritage and ancestry, but also the manner in which they conduct themselves on the road sometimes is not kind. To see people at the top of a drone on a highway sometimes sends a chill down my spine. But I don't know whether it's because I'm old. Sometimes I'm thinking it's because I'm old. Maybe if I was younger, there's an age when you feel macho, yeah? There's an age when certain things look very distant. Especially, I think between the age of 15 and about 27, yeah? Especially for the men, you feel macho. Nothing can take you down. Nothing can fail you. So sometimes it's there's got to be moderation, or there's got to be lessons, or you've got to be in a situation where you have friends who are older, who understand, who have lessons about life and the world that are deeper than what you've known for in that age group. Yeah.
You used the word beast, which is a bit harsh, but you like all things Argentine, Isma.
Yeah.
So
Many.
I came across this. There was a very ugly incident over the weekend in the second division of the La Liga, where Esteban Andrada punched an opponent. He has since released a statement saying he's sorry. Part of his statement says, throughout my career, I've only had one red card, and that was for a handball outside the penalty area. I want to apologize to George Pulido because we are colleagues, and honestly, it was my fault. I lost focus at the moment, and well, I am here for whatever consequences the league may give me. This is this what relegation does? This is Real Zaragoza versus Huesca or something.
Huesca, yeah. Two teams that have played in the La Liga before, yeah.
He just punched someone.
It's indefensible. Indefensible. One of the bonds I have to grind with one of the teams, for example, locally, is Kataka. Kataka is a team that plays in the FIFA Big League. I think 2 years ago, one of their games descended into chaos, where Kataka players started beating the visiting team in Mbali. So it's indefensible for me. And I've argued many times, for everything that the emotions you must feel when playing sport. Whatever you feel cannot be taken out in a fight, using violence against a referee or against an opponent.
I don't even think sport. I mean, we saw Will Smith. That wasn't sport. that was the Grammys. Sorry,
No,
the
but
Oscars.
the Oscars, but when you're commenting about someone's wife, you have to be very
It's
careful.
a joke, but
Men,
that's...
no jokes.
And he laughed, and she...
I'm not very sure. I'm not very sure if you called my girlfriend thin when I want her fat, that I'll take that.
I think when you know that kind of event, because that's the stand-up they do. But anyway, away from that, let's keep
Because
Huh?
maybe when, and I would imagine Will Smith and all Hollywood celebrities have attended a roast, yeah, at Saturday Night Live, and at a roast, anything goes at a roast.
Yes.
I don't think I belong. I could be watching a roast on Comedy Central and find it funny and laugh about it. But it's also, for me, within a human emotion when someone does not take a joke lightly. Especially, I could take a joke about myself. I may not take a joke about calling my girlfriend nyashless. You know? There has to be moderation, yeah? You know?
What if it's a fact?
Yeah, the same way, Mabel may take a joke about herself. She may not take a joke about calling her husband short.
But he
You know?
is short. My husband is short. Actually, you attended our wedding.
Yeah.
I
I
wore,
know him. I know him
I
very
wore flat shoes because I didn't want, the height difference to be that much. But he doesn't mind as well. He's someone who you call him whatever he's
And this morning I was reading a joke, social media and our lives today. Sometimes when you're off social media, you think you're not living. And someone said that because men are no longer stressed by alcohol and football and those other things, he brought a short woman into their lives. Because then you're distressed. Yeah.
But anyway, still speaking about the La Liga, I'm intrigued because I kind of have a soft spot for Rashford. And I was reading some reports. He was on the score sheet the last weekend, but they're talking about his future not being very certain with Barcelona.
He seems, while there's a lot of joy in Barcelona that they're about to win the league title. And I saw the headline. I saw 3 dailies, I think, earlier today. The Marca, Deportivo del Mundo, those Spanish dailies. And I was translating one of them. One of them, I think, has a headline that says the easiest league to win. It's a Madrid...
Bayern?
No, it's a Madrid-centric publication.
Oh, okay.
The Marca.
Okay,
so
okay.
they think other teams have not worked hard enough to stop Barcelona. Besides their own inadequacies. That's why I'm saying that while there's a lot of joy at Barcelona, and they won their last game by 2-0, like you mentioned, and Madrid had drawn theirs 1-0 against Real Betis, a game where I felt Madrid were largely poor in that second half and kept inviting Real Betis onto them after they had taken the lead. The uncertainty around Rashford is, for me, the only dampener to Barcelona's season. It seemed like when he left Manchester United last season, that he had cut down the bridges, that he had burnt the bridges behind him, because it was no longer about the coach. Many people within the club hierarchy, and I've seen ex-United players in punditry and fans who think Rashford was not working hard enough and did not put in as much. And actually, remember, he had to give that interview to Henry Winter, the former. So after all these accusations against Marcus Rashford and how he wasn't putting in the work, how he didn't mind, he went to an interview with one of his friends in journalism. I think all these players have him, Henry Winter. He's written for the BBC, he's written for the Telegraph. Very, very good journalist. You should read some of his works. And he explained about the stuff he's been going through, and also said that those who accuse Rashford, Rashford told Winter that those who accuse him of not working hard enough do not know Rashford the person and how much work he puts in. So what happens is that at the end of the season, on June 30th, when his loan deal runs out at Barcelona, is that he has to return to Manchester.
Yeah.
So the next decision depends on the next United coach. Do United actually want him? Because currently, the coaches who are there did not want him.
Yeah.
Amorim
Ten
did not.
Hag.
I've seen an interview of Michael Carrick say that he wouldn't mind having him in the team, but Carrick's contract is also going to run out. He's on the interim. So if Carrick gets a job permanently, does he take him back? This is United born and bred. This is a boy who joined Manchester United at the age of 8.
Why wouldn't Barcelona keep him?
I don't think they feel he's done enough.
Really?
Yeah, he's done enough to earn the position in their team. Because with the salary caps in Spain, I think Barcelona are being very they are being very careful. Do they pay Rashford that money? They still need to sign some experienced players. Because remember, Barcelona have a very young team. This is the youngest team that they've played in 30, 40 years, something. Actually, the other time when they were knocked out of the Champions League by Atletico Madrid, in commentary, they say this is the youngest Barcelona team they've fielded in the Champions League ever. So they're thinking, if we pay this kind of money, are we then able to manage our budgets? And then who do we bring in? Is Rashford the player we need? Because they have some very good young forwards that they've been using, especially Fermin Lopez is one that comes to mind. Does Rashford then work very well with Rafinha and Yamal? If you're paying him that money, is he even a starter? Because I think in the best Barcelona team, he may not be a starter when you have Yamal and Rafinha. Yeah? Where then does he fit into it? So it's a very difficult situation for Barcelona, I think, to choose. The easiest thing for Rashford is if United get a coach who thinks it can be useful for United, then he goes back home. Yeah.
Yeah, he had better pray then that maybe Michael Carrick stays with his job. But moving on to the Serie A, another interesting story I came across this weekend, which involves Inter, our beloved, which have somehow, they gave away a lead.
Yeah, they led 2-0 against Turin and drew the game 2-2.
Yes, there's a man who is in charge of assigning referees in that top flight, Gianluca Rocci or Rocky.
Yeah.
He has suspended himself following a reported investigation into alleged sporting fraud. Imagine that.
Yeah.
The crime, he selected a referee for an Inter game, and this referee is liked, in quotes, by
Inter Milan. But the accusations...
He suspended himself.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
In literal sense, he resigned, something that wouldn't happen here. But some of the things that he cited in that report, Gianluca Rocchi, are things that he says he did during the 2024-2025 season, not this season in particular. For context, that is very important. But many times when I think about Italian football, it reminds me of one of the things that one of my favorite Ugandan sports journalists or Ugandan writers has ever said, Joseph Kableta. He once said that the closest you can come to Africa in Europe is Italy. Yeah, so many times when things happen in Italy, I'm always referencing Joseph Kableta. So I think the timing is very, very bad for Inter Milan. They are trying to win a league title, and then something like that happens. But it also emphasizes whether Italy is trying to clean up or not, because they have had several match-fixing scandals in the past, or betting scandals. The Calciopoli, like it's called. One of the two of them that they've had have been major, have triggered them winning the World Cup. The one involving Paolo Rossi, you go back to the 1980s, eventually that was a catalyst to them winning the World Cup in 1982, where Paolo Rossi emerges from jail and becomes top scorer at the World Cup. Then the most recent of 20 years ago, 2006, where Juventus were relegated and stripped of the title.
Yeah.
But eventually that precipitated into the Azzurri going on to win the World Cup for the first time in a very long time. So it might work for the national, but for the integrity of the game, I think it's always very bad. It's one of the reasons why today Italian football lacks major investors in the game. There aren't many rich people coming in the game. Yes, there's a Chinese owner at Inter Milan and a few others at AC Milan. Then the Agnelli family that has controlled Juve will stay there forever, but they have not attracted new investment and they've not attracted new TV deals when the world has gone on another level in terms of attracting that kind of money. So there's a bit of, I always use the word moderation, and Maybe that comes with age. I always see things with the context of moderation. Nothing is too bad, nothing is too good. You have to find the middle ground. And that does not augur well for Italian football, that is still struggling for me with credibility. And sometimes you watch their games. I watched Milan against Juventus, and the game ended goalless. And had I not been a sports extremist or had the chance to switch between the NB and Milan Juve, I would have switched off because the game was very slow. Very, very slow. And actually, one of my friends who supports Bayern, Bonnie Lole, who I've mentioned here on the show on multiple occasions, he actually said that while watching the game that he thinks Bayern would beat Milan and Juve 6 goals each because of how poor they were. And of course, Bayern has already done that to Atalanta in the Champions League. So it dampens a bit the title race. Inter Milan are involved in a very interesting game. When Marcus Thuram scored the first and then they got the second through Jan Bisek, you're thinking, okay, they are going to clinch the title this weekend. Then they are pegged back. And that first goal by Torino in that game, a brilliant, brilliant team goal. Movement, passing, all the beautiful things about football are all in that moment. Then they get the equalizer through a penalty. Then thereafter, you wait for Milan and Juve, who drew, like I stated. But earlier, there had been Napoli beating Cremonese by 4-0. And now the title race is postponed for another week because Inter Milan could not clinch the 3 points. Amidst all that, there's something you can chew on in terms of football. And then there's Gianluca Rocchi, who thinks he should have the headlines. Never a good thing.
Never a good thing. Okay. The fairy tale in France is, Lyon? You said Lyon?
Racing Lons.
Lons. Because Lyon is Lyon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Lons is Lens.
Yeah.
I think the E has some kind of apostrophe. I'm not very good with French at all.
Well,
the bubble has burst.
Yeah.
I think
it's now
there is a 6-point gap because PSG have started racking up points and they are in the mode. The last 2 games they've won by a combined margin of 6-0. I've seen Luis Enrique even rotate and give many players an opportunity because he's resting players for that game against Bayern Munich in the Champions League, which we'll talk about at some point. But clearly, PSG now look like will be champions, but they should become champions for me after defeat to Racing Lons, who are very angry about that postponed game.
Yes.
In the week when they played Liverpool. Now, for them, beating PSG may not be enough to win the league because it's a 6-point margin. But I think they would love to beat PSG at some point to wrap up the season. So 6-point margin, PSG should be closer to their coronation than ever.
Okay. Now to the English Premier League, the battle at the bottom, West Ham and surprise, Tottenham. Both won.
Yeah, surprised that they won a game of football. Eventually,
since January, is that the statistics for?
Yeah,
for
the last one in December. They are not won in 16 league games, so they are not won a game this year in the league, and that is relegation form. If they get relegated, and sometimes maybe we need better foresight. When we watched Tottenham at the start of the season, they had brought in Thomas Frank, good coach, good coach for me. They compete with PSG. I think they won their first game in the league. Then they beat Man City. Yeah, when he had just taken the job. Then you're thinking Tottenham will have a very bright season. Then thereafter, it's gone down and down and down and down. Part of it down to injuries, part of it down to lack of execution. But if they eventually get relegated, someone has to walk into the boardroom and slap every board member at least once. Because in what was a bad season, they wasted 5 games with Hugo Tudor. Yeah? Those 5 games, they can never reclaim. They got a draw in those 5 under Hugo Tudor. They draw with Liverpool. But those were games that they wasted. Now, even winning their games may not be sufficient because they need to win as West Ham lose. Because right now, like you've stated, I think all of us can say Nottingham Forest, Leeds United are out of this mess. If Leeds win one more game, then they are going to stay in the league. Nottingham Forest are doing a very good job. That 5-goal drubbing of Sunderland was probably testament of how far they've come under Vitor Pereira. Now, it's, for me, it's almost a direct shootout between West Ham and Tottenham.
Tottenham.
And you must have seen what it meant to Tottenham. They've not won for a very long time. They've even forgotten what it feels like to win. Roberto Di Zerbi celebrated like they had won a cup final. Yeah, they still have other cup finals to come because they need to win almost all their games to stay up, because all of us can comfortably say West Ham will win one. And West Ham got an out of jail card in that game against Everton. After Everton had equalized through Drewsbury Hall, then that late winner from Callum Wilson deep into added time for them to get the 3 points. So right now where they are, they need to win and then hope that West Ham drop points. But you can only win a lottery by buying a ticket. I think by winning a game, they bought themselves a ticket to that lottery. Had they not won at Wolves, I would have been on the show declaring them a very good team in the championship. But they survive for another week, and it's going to be like this almost every week. Every game is going to mean so much for where Tottenham end up at the end of the season.
Is that the same for Arsenal, surviving another week with that 1-0 draw at home to Newcastle?
What I've felt, and I've said here on multiple occasions, that within the Arsenal team, I think there is genuine belief they can win the league. At least from what Mikel Arteta has said, and from what the team publicist has said.
He also celebrated like...
Yeah, it was that huge. It was that huge. Had they not picked those points after the chances that Johan Visa missed, the chance that Johan Visa missed for Newcastle, you feel this was a very important result for the Arsenal. Had they not got that, on a weekend when Man City were not in action, then you do not throw away this kind of opportunities. So, a very huge result for the Arsenal. They can now sit pretty. And like I've said, everyone within the team acts like they can win the league. The team publicist I meant was Declan Rice. Every interview he gives, they are going to win the league. Arteta has been very positive. What is not happening for them is that I do not hear or see enough Arsenal fans, either here on television or in the stadium, who exude the same kind of confidence in the team, because many of them are saying, we've seen our team in this situation before, and they've let us down. So fans have been very, very cautious about Arsenal's chances. But here is the best part of this, that after that result against Newcastle, Arsenal then play again before Man City walk out for their next game, because Arsenal then play against Fulham at the Emirates. They win that, they are 6 points clear before Man City play. And we can all say maybe it doesn't matter. City will win their games in hand against Bournemouth and Crystal Palace. But in the end...
A bogey side used to call Crystal Palace.
Bogey side. Yeah, but in the end, I think you're better off, for me in sport, you're better off being pursued than being the pursuer. I would rather be in a situation where you have a lead and a cushion where you can have...
You're better off being pursued than the pursuer.
I think at this stage of a season, when 3, 4, 5
does that
games,
only apply to sport or other areas of life?
In other areas of life, I'm not very sure, because I'd love a situation where I'm pursued, but I've not had that opportunity. Remember, let me tell you one of my best stories. When I was younger, our late dad always encouraged us to go to cinema, to go to the theater. He loved school plays. As part of the reasons why I used to come to visitation and stay the entire day. Many men do not do that. Even I struggle to do that. I've done it, but I struggle to do it. So I went to watch a play that he encouraged me to do at the National Theatre. I was in high school. It was called The Republic of Emilia. Namasagali College School production at the peak. I think is the school still open? I think it is.
I think it's still there.
But it does not excel in the way it used to do with sports and art and drama. Because their drama, their costume, you'll see the advert on UTV and you want to go. So I went to watch a play called The Republic of Emilia. Now that play is the last, if someone who was in Namasagali at the time would tell, is a play whose theme turned the world upside down. So one of the most interesting scenes in that play is a lady hitting on a man, and the man is Kwemorai and playing hard to get, and it turns the world upside down. All the roles that we see in the world today that are undertaken by men, undertaken by women, in that play, and it was very interesting. Women are the leaders in most of the places. The men take care of the home, the things that we take for granted. Now Namasagali, they play that turned the world upside down. And now when you thought about Pasio and Pasioi, my mind immediately went to Namasagali College. Someone needs to revive that culture. Someone, because the
Yeah.
first weekend of holidays, if your parents were free enough who had a bit of money, Namasagali College was a place to, rather National
National
Theatre was
Theatre.
a place to be for that weekend. Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday, and the following week. We miss you, Namasagali.
Okay, let's talk about those pursuing slots 3, 4, 5, including Anslot. I don't know if he's still there. But I think you have said here that you thought he would actually lose his job at some point in this
I
season.
thought he should have been gone in November.
Okay. But yeah, let's talk about those pursuing those slots. United is in action tonight.
Yeah, on Monday night. So there's two of them that were in action because Chelsea were in an FA Cup semi-final, but doesn't matter. They had played their game in hand against Brighton in the week. So Liverpool go and win a game, beat Crystal Palace for the first time at Anfield in 5 years. When you talk of bogey side, and I'd mentioned that when I'd seen Ismail Assar rested in the week, I had profound fears, but in the end, Liverpool, I thought, were too good for Crystal Palace. Played on the front foot and eventually got the 3-1 victory, while Aston Villa were beaten at Fulham, at Craven Cottage, in a very boring game of football. I think Fulham who won the game had 2 or 3 chances in the game, and Villa barely created. You could almost tell the frustration of Unai Emery. I also had a very interesting story during commentary, and you know I'm a very keen listener to commentary more than I read. That Craven Cottage is the oldest stadium in London. Ooh. The oldest football stadium in London. I thought that very interesting because it's right by the River Thames, where there's that famous boat race between Cambridge and Oxford. That annual boat race, I think it's happened already. These days, I think Cambridge win it a lot. Oxford do not, because when it comes out on BBC Sports World, I never miss here. But it was also a very interesting start. But maybe from that top 5 race, we could have seen the last of Mohamed Salah. He went off with a hamstring injury. Most of his injuries last about 3 to 4 weeks. When we saw him pull up, you almost started to sense this is a very terrible farewell if he doesn't work out again, because I think many of us would love to give him another opportunity to play.
And right now, and
say bye, because right now he's playing. He's playing and scoring goals. He seems very happy with the decision that was taken by him and the club for him to leave. End of the season, then he walks off with that injury. Hopefully he gets another opportunity to kick a ball at Anfield before he departs for the next phase of his life.
Okay, to the FA Cup semi-final, I must say, I don't know, I think we have talked about it here. Does success favor the prepared? Because I was really so sad for Southampton. Really.
Yeah.
I thought that was unfair. City waited, what, 89th minute to score? Or 80th or something. But they really held their own. This is a team that's not even in the Premier League.
But by the end of the game, one of the things that confirmed is how good a team Southampton is, and hopefully they get promoted. Because before that game, they had been on a 20-match unbeaten streak, and could almost tell the confidence that even when they were pressed by City in their defensive third, Southampton were not trashing the ball out. They have one of their defenders who has played for England, Howard Bayliss. I thought was very, very good. But in the end, when you take the lead against a team as good as City, and they have so much in reserve they could bring on, because you have Jeremy Doku coming off the bench.
I saw Doku,
because Guardiola had made changes, as many as 9, from the previous game, and given some of their bench players an opportunity to play. When they came on, you could almost tell the ante had gone up, the level in quality had gone up. They had upgraded from having John Stones and Ake and Ryan Etinuri and James Trafford and all these others. But eventually it's one of the bench players who had been given an opportunity in the rotation who got the winner, Nico Gonzalez, as City eventually got the result to confirm their 4th straight appearance in the FA Cup. So you can almost rename this the Pep Guardiola Cup,
I know.
or or Wembley is a second home, because over the past few years, besides the Etihad, City have played the next stadium where City have played the most number of games is Wembley. That's how often they are there because of the Carabao and the FA Cup. So you can also maybe tag something to that. That's how good they've been in this competition. But they have to beat Chelsea in that final in May, because Chelsea came through a bruising encounter against Leeds by a goal to
They
nil.
were fortunate to win.
Fortunate, you could say, yes, but I thought Leeds United were very disappointing. Over the past weeks, they played some of their best football. They put teams on the back foot. They beat United by 2-1 at Old Trafford. This was one of their most disappointing performances. I didn't think they created as much. They didn't play at the right tempo. The few chances they created were not sufficient, and Chelsea had so much control in that midfield. I thought Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo could have played this game in sleepers and got away with it. That's how poor I thought Leeds were in that area. So maybe they've run out of steam in the competition, and they are not. And Leeds are not an FA Cup team. Some of the stats show that Leeds last played an FA Cup final in 1973. If you compare that with Chelsea, who are 8-time FA Cup champions and have been in the final, have been going to Wembley, I think, in 6 of the last 7 years. Leeds just hit their ceiling and could not give any more. But in the end, many of us may be a very good final, because in the end, the better team in our minds, even if they've not showed it on the pitch this season, is Chelsea against Man City. I think brings a lot more talkability than there would have been if the final was Man City against Leeds United.
I wanted Southampton versus Leeds. But Isma...
You always root for the underdog.
Yes. If Rosinho was watching that game, what do you think would have gone through his mind? Did you see any changes that the new coach made that maybe he wouldn't have done?
Maybe. I thought pairing Adribioyo and Chaloba for the physicality was one of the changes, because he played with a back four. There isn't much else. Then João Pedro, of course, at the front. There isn't much that I felt Callum McFarlane, the interim coach, changed in terms of what they've been doing under Liam Rosinia. But in that moment, it felt a bit of that Luganda saying that Rosinia abazanyi bamukube nyumba, because there was a lot more effort, there was a lot more purpose about how they went in attack. And maybe in the latter games before Rosinia was sacked, did not have João Pedro on the pitch. And Albinian heavily criticized Liam Delap and Alejandro Garnacho. But when you have João Pedro, you have a better target man in that area of the pitch, and they looked better in that sense. So, yes, as a coach, you look back, and if you really still needed to be in the job, and you look back and say, these players could have performed better or could have followed my instructions better, and they didn't do that when he was here. So you feel hard done by if you're Liam Rosinia by watching that game. But in the end, it's what it is. Our coaches are hired to be fired.
I know, it's quite sad. Let's talk about the semi-finals with the UEFA Champions League. Atletico versus Arsenal.
Second successive year that Arsenal are playing a semi-final in Europe. They should be very impressed with the journey so far, before they walk out at the Wanda Metropolitan on Wednesday. I think the two teams going to the game not in the best of form. Well, Arsenal won against Newcastle in the league. They weren't excellent. And you cannot say they blew Sporting Lisbon away like they should have or they could have in that quarterfinal. On the other side, Atletico are even a worse case. They've lost 7 of their last 9 games. And the 2 they've won is their latest round in the league, and then the game they beat Barcelona in the Champions League. They've been very poor. They've been losing games left, right, and center. And actually, they had lost 4 in a row before they won in the league. So, in terms of form, they're right at the same level. Should be a very interesting game, because these are 2 teams that all of us in the past 30 years think should have won the Champions League, but neither of them has. Atletico have even played the final.
Yeah.
They played the final and lost in 2014. against Real Madrid, a final which they led by a 1-0 before conceding that equalizer very late in the game to Sergio Ramos. I think in added time before the game went into extra time, which then Madrid blew them away, as Rexo said. But these are two teams that have deserved to win at least one European title in the past 30 years, and they haven't. So, in terms of pedigree, I think they're right at the same level. However, I want to tip Atletico 50-48. That's how, for me, small the margins are. And the reason why I choose Atletico over Arsenal, for me, is their forward line. When you have Julian Alvarez, Antoine Griezmann, Alexander Soloth, you're more likely to score goals than a team that has Victor Gyökeres and Kai Havertz, who is so limp at the weekend. Yes, even if Saka is back, this hasn't been one of his best seasons, and the injuries have affected him quite a bit. He hasn't found rhythm because he's been in and out of the team because of injuries. So even if you have, let's say, Saka, Trossard, Martinelli, Victor Gyökeres, Eberechi Eze, and Kai Havertz as a bunch, if I juxtapose that against Julian Alvarez, Soloth, Antoine Griezmann, Giuliano Simeone on the right, and all the guys in that area, I think I would tip Atletico Madrid because of that forward line. However, maybe the game will be won in midfield, and for me, the physicality has got to come to the fore. The midfielders and the kind of football, the brand of football that Diego Simeone wants, is players who are going to get into other people's faces and probably make a tackle here and there. I think he wouldn't mind 9 of his players moving out, finishing a game with a yellow card, provided none is sent off. And sometimes he doesn't even mind having a red card if it is for the team, in that sense. So in that area, Zubimendi and Declan Rice have got to be very critical how physical they go out against Atletico. And Martin Odegaard, in terms of creativity, I think he's looked fairly good ever since he got back from that injury. And it's also given Eberechi Eze a bit of freedom, because now with Odegaard playing in the central axis behind the target man or the lone striker, you have Eberechi Eze coming off the left, but he's having a lot of room in the middle, because Odegaard naturally often drifts either to the right or drops in deeper and then creates a bit of room for Eberechi Eze outside of the box. So should be a very interesting chess game. People described it as haram ball when the fixture was first drawn up, because I think both coaches are very conservative. But for me, it's going to be a very, very good chess game, enjoyable to watch.
What about the other one? It feels like a final as well, PSG versus Bayern Munich.
6 years ago, when PSG arrived in a Champions League final, they did not look ready. And they lost to Bayern by a 1-0. I think a lot has changed since then. They are champions of Europe, and they are going for a second successive title. And for everything that PSG have not been in the first part of the season, I think they have clicked into gear. We mentioned when we were discussing the French League how they've gone from leading by a point to leading by 6.
6, yeah.
And their players, many of them have been very good in Europe, more than they've been good in the French League, especially Kivicha Kvaratskhelia and then Ousmane Dembele. So should be another interesting one, a game that will bring out the best in terms of attacking football. I would imagine maybe the one advantage Bayern Munich might have over PSG is that they have a striker in Harry Kane, because of the numbers he racks up. But because of what PSG and Desiree Doué, Badri Bakol and the others, they can negate that by the distribution of the goals. And these are two teams where, in terms of stability, I think they're right at the same level. Their players are much more aware. If you start, you can even start to discuss the players off head. Yeah, you know the abilities of Hakimi, Nuno Gomez, Marquinhos, and Pacho at the back line. Then today you can also easily discuss the abilities of the Bayern defensive line: Stanisic, Jonathan Tah, then Dayot Upamecano, who has come into his element a lot more. Then you look at their midfield. I think Kimmich and Vitinha are very similar in terms of control. I would say Vitinha has an advantage in terms of how he reads the game and his contribution in terms of goals. But Kimmich makes up for that with his ability from set pieces, because he's in charge of those. So there's a lot of balance in terms of stability. The teams seem right at the same level. Maybe it will come down to what substitutions they make, what tactics they go for. You cannot expect either PSG or Bayern to be on the back foot. Both of them will play on the front foot, and maybe someone, the freshness of Musiala, who hasn't played a lot of football this season, will be a factor, or Bacola, or maybe Fabian Ruiz, for example, for PSG. Back fit and is played over the past 10 days or so. 2-3 games where he's come off a bench, then he comes back into this one and is a factor. So two teams that right at the same level in terms of excellence. It's a very tough game to choose who eventually goes to that final.
So you're choosing Atletico, but here you're not choosing.
Very difficult, but because of Harry Kane, and for me, I'm saying because of the forward line. Because of the ability of Harry Kane, yeah, I would pick Bayern. But that's another marginal one. Like I stated, that I would go with Atletico 52-48 in terms of percentages. I think with Bayern PSG, I would then go 51-49. That's how close I think the semi-finals are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about basketball. 41-year-old LeBron James is still coming to the rescue, still carrying his weight, coming to the rescue since some of his teammates are injured. He's still 41. Can you imagine? Some kind of machine.
Don't make me reveal my age. But anyway, we are in the same quadrant with LeBron, and I've been lucky to watch his entire career right from the start.
He still has a lot in the tank.
He thinks he does, but that series, which they are playing with the Rockets, is moving into Game 5, and that's because the Rockets won Game 4 on Sunday night or Monday morning. LeBron had his worst playoff game in terms of scoring because he scored only 10. So that series is now 3-1, and hopefully the Lakers can close this out at the Crypto Arena in Game 5 and advance to the next round. If they do, they might meet a team that is already that will have swept their first round series. Lakers had that opponent because they were leading 3-0 before losing that Game 4. Now, OKC should make that with a sweep. They are leading 3-0 against the Phoenix Suns and should comfortably make it to the next round because SGA is unplayable, even if they are missing Jalen Williams at this point in time. Then still in the Western Conference, on the other half of the draw, Victor Wembanyama is back from that concussion. And I saw at his press conference, he didn't want to comment about the doctors because I think in his mind, he must have been feeling fine. They won Game 1 with him, making the record of the most points scored by a playoff debutant. Then they lost Game 2 when he went out concussed. Then they won Game 3 without him by 2-1. Sheldon Castle and all the other boys coming to the party, coming from 15 points down. Then in Game 4 with Victor Wembanyama back, they were trailing by 17 at halftime, and then they came back from 17 down to win the game by more than 15 points. So they are now leading 3-1 and should close out the series inside 5 games to make it to the semifinals. And one of our loyal viewers, Shaban Lubega Benteke, who lives in the US now, thinks the Spurs will win the championship next year. I think, given an opportunity, I think they have the tools to win it even this year. That's how much. Okay, there is a bit of the lack of experience because they have some very good young players, Harper, Sheldon Castle, who have been part of some struggles, and even Victor Wembanyama too. But they have some experience, some old hands like De'Aaron Fox, who has been very critical in the past 2 games as they've taken that strong 3-1 lead. Then in the Eastern Conference, we're on the brink of knocking out the seed 1 because the Detroit Pistons are trailing to Paolo Banchero and the Orlando Magic in that series by 2-1. The other series involving the Atlanta Hawks and the Knicks is now tied at 2-2 because the Knicks went to Atlanta and won that Game 4. The other one is that Joel Embiid is back for the Philadelphia 76ers, but that wasn't sufficient as they were blown away by the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics scored 24 threes. That is 72 points out of their 128 they scored in that game, and they were just unplayable from behind the arc. So the Celtics also lead that series, and then the other game is between the Raptors and the Cleveland Cavaliers. That series is now tied 2-2. because the Raptors won. A very young Raptors team won their game against Cleveland Cavaliers, and there's a forum where we share a lot of NBA content, and I've been extremely critical of James Harden because I thought in the final 2-3 minutes of the game he was hiding. He didn't want to come towards the ball, he didn't pick the ball, and eventually it came down to what Donovan Mitchell was able to do, and he wasn't able to carry the Cleveland Cavaliers over the line. And in the end, now that series is 2-2, luckily game 5 is in Cleveland, so if they win that and go up 3-2, we are guaranteed at least a game 6 in that series before we chop another bunch of teams off at this round and move into the semifinals, both in the Eastern and the Western Conference.
Okay. And similar to basketball, on to volleyball. What lessons can we learn from Nemo Stars and Sportes?
We should probably build an arena. That's the biggest lesson every time teams have to travel to Rwanda. That's the first
But
thing.
that is an hour flight or less. Did they fly? Did they go by road?
They went by road.
Isn't it easier to go to Kigali than it is to Yumbe?
Yes, 8 hours. If you can have breakfast here and have dinner in Kigali.
Yeah.
That's how quickly. So the two teams that are competing there, that is Sportes and
Nemo Stars,
have done fairly well, even if we would have preferred that they performed better than they have. Would have preferred that they perform better than they have, but they haven't. And for Sportes, for me, it's shedding a bit of skin because they've won league titles, they've been in existence for 30 years, and they've never experienced games of this magnitude. So after 3 games, they had lost 2, which you would expect. But I think Warren Mohanja and team will have learned a few things. They lost to teams they should be losing to because they had lost to Al Ahly, the Giants from Egypt. They play every sport. And then they had also lost to Kepler, the Rwandan university that has invested heavily in sport. But they were able to beat Equity, which was one of the other results. And then on the other side, I've seen Nemo Stars performed, you could say, better because they had won their game against Petrojet. They beat Nigeria Customs and then lost to APR in their first 3 games. So for me, it's a lot to do with preparation, maybe making the game a bit pro, because all these players in Ugandan teams have day jobs, 8 to 5. Then they go and play. The difference is that most of the teams they are playing against do not do 8 to 5. They are pros. They wake up every single day and think about how to hit the ball as hard as they could. And that's for me the major difference. So in terms of the levels of development, we are still very much amateur. Some of these teams are professional, and those that are not pro are at least semi-pro. That's why you have several players from Uganda who are actually playing their volleyball there, especially with the women, the Catherine Ainembabas and the others. And before that, the Peaceful Singes were playing there. So it's about that. How will volleyball move from the level where they've been amateur to at least being semi-pro? That, for me, is the biggest lesson they can take out of this tournament.
Okay, but anyway, circumstances do differ. Because
Yeah.
as you're talking about that, I was thinking, would you like work in a bank, Isma? For as long as I've known you, you've been in media and in sport, and it just works so well. Would you like take a 9 to 5 in a bank or?
I think I would. I think I would. Though I find places where the system is done for you, and all you have to do is come and fit in. And banking is one of those. Many years ago, I was interacting with David Mutaka. David Mutaka is a former rugby player and coach. If you're around rugby, is often the MC. I think he's a human resource managing partner at Stanbic. And I remember telling him about how I needed a job. Young, I started covering the game of rugby. And David Mutaka told me, you would struggle in a bank. And actually, I also know that one of our colleagues, Innocent Indaula, also sought a job in a bank. And the same person told him you'd be very bored. He told him you'd be very bored. I don't know. Okay, in our setting, because of a joblessness, unemployment, underemployment, and everything you can call it, many people are in jobs because that's what they could find to do. Not because that's what their ability is, or not, that's not what they enjoy to do. When I see all these TV interviews of people in the West and say, I enjoy my job, I'm like, come and do that interview in Uganda.
But
Many people do jobs not because they enjoy them. It's because what they could find.
But Isma, it's not good to be envious, but I'm sure many people are envious of you as we end.
Because they don't know what I go through.
You
The grass is greener. The grass is greener.
You read about fencing, you read about woodball, you read
I
about
love synchronized swimming.
cycling, synchronized swimming. And that's your job, to just edit the stories and you pass them on.
It takes exceptional ability. If we switched for a week, they would be terrible at what I do. And I would excel at what they do.
But it is what you love. Like, it's not as though you're editing.
No, not really. I don't think it's something I'm going to do my entire life till my 70s.
Really?
I think one day I'll walk away. Yeah? And the other day, Joseph Cableta was on NBA Sport and said, it's always good to walk away when the cheer is still loud for you.
Yeah.
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 And that's why he was giving reasons why he walked away. And still today, up to today, we still cheer Joseph Cableta, what he did in his time. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always very, very important to know when to walk away.
Well, we are still here for now. Second Take with Isma Dakabachigongo. The pleasure is ours to come to you every week, sometimes even twice a week. So click, like, subscribe. Tell us possibly some of the games like woodball that we don't talk much about.
Yeah.
If there's any comment you have, Isma is all yours. Do take care of yourselves.
Are you tired of the daily hustle and bustle, the endless traffic just to get your little one to a good school? GMS Snap Bingo offers a unique blend of academic excellence with a holistic child development in both nursery and primary. We provide a national curriculum with an international touch. Enroll your child today by visiting our campus along Trinity College, Nabigo Road. GMS Snap Bingo, where every child's potential is a reality. Because we care.